Evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Board Special Meeting and Work Session for October 17th, 2017. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilwoman Dottori?
Present.
Councilwoman Jeffrey?
Present.
Councilman Wiltshire?
Present.
Councilwoman Feldman?
Present.
And Supervisor Levenberg?
Here.
Do we have any announcements this evening?
I surely do. Firstly, I want to congratulate the Ossining PBA on their first of hopefully many 5K races this past weekend. They raised money for the Hope for Heroes program, which helps disabled police, firefighters, and veterans. The race started and finished in our very own Cedar Lane Park. The weather held out. The race was run or walked by about 70 participants, and their family members came to cheer us all on. I want to give a big shout out to our parks and highway staff for busting their behinds to get the path around the pond cleaned up and ready so everyone could run safely. Also at Cedar Lane Park that day, the Cedar Lane Art Center hosted several artists as part of the Ossining Arts Council's Open Studio Tour. I'd like to share this quick report from Art Center manager Keith Gordon. The 5 artists at Cedar Lane Art Center greatly enjoyed participating in the OAC's first annual Open Studio Tour. Visitors came steadily throughout the day, remarked on what a beautiful job was done in restoring and repurposing the Cedar Lane Art Center building, as well as Cedar Lane Park in general. Over 50 people signed our guest list, and at least 20 more visited without signing in. $820 in sales occurred, raising funds for OAC, and a good number of people indicated interest in taking classes at the Art Center in the near future. In addition to our current and former town supervisors and town board members, we were visited by 3 of the teachers at the Newcastle Art Center and the adult ed ceramics teacher at Croton High School, along with some of her students. We forged strong bonds with these 2 neighboring ceramics programs, which I hope will produce cooperative efforts in the future. On behalf of all 5 of the CLAC artists, we recommend that OAC repeat the effort in the future. Somehow we need to find a way for participating artists to get to see the studios of other participants. One option might be to get a video of each tour site, perhaps by GoTV. So anyway, it was very successful. I did get a chance to go to a couple of other studios. I'm not sure if anybody else had a chance, but it was wonderful. And again, the Parks Department did a great job getting that space ready, and Keith Gordon and Kathy Fiella as well. So thanks for all that.
I got to about half of them that were very impressive and very diverse. It was a great event.
It was a great event and a good first go, and I'm sure that we will have more. I also want to remind everyone that Route 134 at Route 9A is back open and looking fine. The state did a great job, as did the Village and Town crews. We are thrilled to have these projects completed, which have unfortunately been stalled for many years, I believe almost 12. It is a real win for our community to finally get this done. I want to thank our Highway Superintendent, Michael G. O'Connor, and his crew, our Water Superintendent, Andy Teese, and the village staff, and our friends at the DOT for their attention to detail and their quick work. While that work is complete, the work a bit farther down 9A has just begun. As you may recall, this is the Village of Briarcliff project that is being partially funded by the town of Ossining and New York State. This is at North State Road. And it's well underway, and also Westchester County is also involved. You can see the right-hand turning lane from the northbound lane already taking shape, and we'll continue to update you as the work progresses. The state is also doing work there on the signalization. This Thursday, October 19th, the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series will host a screening of Swim Team, a film that chronicles the formation of a competitive swim team comprised of students along the autism spectrum. The screening will be followed by a panel discussion featuring, among others, Allison McIntyre, OHS graduate and behavior analyst for the Ossining School District. This free event begins at 6:30 p.m. in the Ossining Public Library's Boudars Theater. The Ossining Historical Society Museum's 86th annual dinner and silent auction will take place this Friday night, October 20th, at the Briarcliff Manor on Studio Hill Road at 6 p.m. Tickets may still be available. Call 941-0001 to secure your spot for this event. If you're ready to kick off Halloween a little early, at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday the 21st, the Village of Briarcliff Manor, along with the Recreation Department and Fire Department, will host the annual Ragamuffin Parade. The parade marches from right in front of the engineering building at 1360 Pleasantville Road. Costumed marchers will proceed through the village to the fire department parking lot, where goodie bags, refreshments, and entertainment will be waiting. Also on Saturday the 21st, which is going to be a very busy day around Ossining, the Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy, starting at 9 a.m., will hold their last gravestone cleaning for the season at Sparta Cemetery. As always, no experience is required, just a willingness to learn and maybe get a little soggy. That same afternoon and evening, you can also experience the roots of American music at the Jug Tavern. Tim Rowell on banjo and Ambrose Vertibello on fiddle will be performing at 3 p.m. and at 7 p.m. Seats are very limited in the Jug Tavern, so you may still be able to get a reservation. I don't believe there's any charge for it, but you do need to get a reservation. Events at jugtavern.org. Also on Saturday, October 21st, the Ossining Arts Council will host Off the Wall and a super supper at the Steamer Firehouse on Main Street. There will be art for sale in all price ranges. What better holiday gift could you give than a piece of original artwork? And yes, I said the H word. Holidays are coming up. You can also come for the opening reception super supper, which will feature a variety of homemade dishes served in handmade ceramic bowls that you can take home with you. The bowls are limited, so be sure to arrive right at 6:30 p.m. to make sure to get yours. $25 will buy you 2 plentiful and delicious servings of food, plus salad, bread, and a dessert. And I believe that you also get a handmade bowl as part of that. If you're too late for the bowl, it's $15. OssiningArtsCouncil.org for more information. The Mike Risco Music School will be joining other local musicians at the Rock to Rebuild event on Sunday, October 22nd. A group of Westchester musicians will be playing the music of the band, the Grateful Dead, and the Allman Brothers Band between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. at the Shenorock Shore Club in Rye to raise money for hurricane relief. Tickets are $40 a person or $10 if you're a student. Visit rebuild.org for more information on this fun afternoon out for a great cause. Another great event at month's end is the 3rd annual Halloween Parade for Pets and Kids, presented by the Ossining Uptown Alliance. It's a chance for your kids and the family pooch to strut their stuff and show off their Halloween spirit. Kids and pets in costume will gather at 11 a.m. on Saturday, October 28th at the Ossining Elks Club at 118 Croton Avenue, and will march up the hill to the Mike Risco Music School, where there will be activities, snacks, and prizes for all. This fun event is sponsored by the Elks Club, the Mike Risco Music School, Dragonfly Yoga, Posh Pets, Greg Perry Photography, and Family Veterinary Care. I want to take another opportunity to plug the town's event, Forest O' Fears, which is the haunted hayride coming to Cedar Lane Park on Friday, October 27th and Saturday, October 28th. It's 2 nights this year. Our ghoulish gang has been hard at work turning our peaceful park into a Halloween hangout, and you're invited to join us. Visit www.forestofears.org to snag your tickets for this annual event. Tickets will sell out, and no hayride tickets will be available for purchase at the event itself. If the spooky stuff isn't for you, not to worry. Our Halloween Village will have plenty of crafts, games, and activities for our youngest party animals, and we will also have Gyro Uno and a Beats Pizza food truck on site to sell you some tasty treats. Finally, I know our board is excited that October 31st is a 5th Tuesday, so that means everyone can attend the 2nd annual Halloween Spooktacular. All are welcome between 6 and 8 p.m. to join the party on Main Street for the Ossining Police Department and Ossining Recreation and Parks Department's Trunk or Treat. You can dance to some great music, strut your stuff in the costume parade, and oh yeah, grab a few handfuls of candy. We encourage everyone to check out the safe, family-friendly Halloween event on Tuesday, 31st. Anything else?
Buying lots of candy.
Yes. Councilwoman Feldman and I did participate in this event wholeheartedly last year. The Recreation Department does have an awful lot of candy. We did also bring some candy and
Glow sticks.
Yes, we wound our way around to the various and sundry trunks and helped give out candy. It was a lot of fun. I encourage my fellow board members to join us. It's lots of fun to give out all that candy.
And I have children that go trick-or-treating.
Are they going to come to trunk or treat? It's fun. You
I'm
get a
sure
lot of
it
candy
is.
in the smallest space possible.
I
Just
like to
trunk
trick-or-treat
to
with their
trunk.
friends,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Suggest it. Maybe they'll try it out.
All right.
Anybody else have
I'll
any other?
suggest it.
Okay. Anybody else have any other announcements? Okay. Fantastic. So, in that case.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on agenda items? Seeing none. We're going to board resolutions. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the September 26, 2017 minutes of the regular meeting as presented.
These were the missing minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Be it resolved that upon recommendation of the town supervisor, the town board hereby ratifies and approves the stipulation of agreement regarding John Orlando between the town and Local 456 International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Chauffeurs, Warehousemen, and Helpers of America, AFL-CIO, effective October 18th, 2017, and be it further resolved that the town supervisor is authorized to execute the stipulation on the town's behalf.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Whereas the town board of the town of Ossining passed a resolution on August 22nd, 2017, accepting the high bid for the auction property at 15 Meadowbrook Drive. And whereas the receiver of taxes has informed the board that an additional buyer's name must be added to the title and deed. Be it resolved that the resolution from August 22nd regarding the above be replaced by the following.
And do we have to read the entire resolution, or can we just say?
I think just a description of what the modification is sufficient, given that it was already read into the record and it's part of the agenda.
Okay, so we're just adding the name, and you want to just read the name?
Yeah, so in the fourth and fifth paragraph, we are adding the name Miss Blanca Nambel to the name Mr. Luis Arevalo.
Those are going to be the owners of the property. The closing is scheduled for tomorrow. They're actually husband and wife. So originally it only said husband, and then their attorney contacted us and just asked that the deed be amended. So it was an easy clerical amendment, but just belts and suspenders. We thought we'd have the town board do a resolution.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. Thank you very much. And now, may I have a motion to adjourn this special meeting and enter into our work session?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have three items on the agenda this evening, and we are going to begin with our Superintendent of Cemeteries, Pete Connolly. We asked Pete to join us tonight to cover two topics. The first of which is an update on the capital improvements that this board approved for Dale Cemetery this year, and the second is a conversation of, with Pete about his proposal to update the Dale Cemetery fee schedule.
Okay, good evening.
Hi,
Is this on?
Connolly. Thank you for joining us tonight. Do you want us to, do we need to shift over? Are you going to be using the screen at all?
I'm gonna take that as
You're
yes.
going to be
Going
looking at
into
pictures?
the you're doing improvements first, or?
You are. Yes,
Okay,
you are.
fine. Okay.
All right, let's start with that. All right. How are you?
I'm ready.
All right. All right.
Okay, just some photos of the improvements throughout the cemetery. This was before paving in Section 9. Very dangerous icing condition in cold weather. And we contacted the Parks and Highway Department, and jointly we repaired that situation with drainage. And this past winter, no icing occurred. So that was a good job and a good coordinated effort with departments. The finished product there in Section 9, paving. This is the Marble Place wall. You come in the other entrance from Dale Avenue and Marble Place, and this is the crack that's in the wall. And this was repaired sometime in August by the Highway Department.
Man, a few words tonight, Pete. Flying through this.
What else is in it? It's the finished product there.
The old one was one of the old Sing Sing marble walls?
No, I don't think so. No, it was just block. Yeah, I think either Floyd or one of those storms took it out years ago. Yeah. So it also shows the new paving from the entrance. Another shot of that. They did both sides of the wall and stuccoed. All right, this is a shot of the paving also, just in front of the cottage. That's a parking area where the truck is. We had them do on the left of the maintenance garage, that was just all dirt. Looks a lot better, and it'll stay cleaner and less mud in the winter. This is also new paving in Fireman Circle. And another area by the receiving vault. And this was all dirt. It's a turnaround at the end of by section A, B, and C. And this is the Collyer vault. And the whole circle, the whole turnaround was paved. Was never paved before. Just some improvements. This is our new truck that we received in June. 23 new section signs are ordered and posts. They should be in very shortly. That is the original section sign. It was rehabbed, but the posts are going to be all new. This is the superintendent's cottage, and we've been trying to receive some grants to rehab that. And the foreman and his son, who also work with us, live there at the present time. And that's just another view of that. It needs, as you can see, foundation work, window replacement, painting of the trim, which is probably lead-based. The house would have to be encapsulated and, the lead taken away. That's going to be a little project there. This is a recent funeral down in Section 9 last Thursday. Had probably over 100 cars and 200 people. This is just a shot of what's on the way. That's winter in Section 12 with some temporary markers there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. Makes it a little harder there. Somehow my grandson got in there down at the spray park. That's the presentation.
Warm us back up. Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Okay.
All right.
Very nice. Thank you. A lot of good work, and
Thanks. A
we
lot of
continue to hear
yeah.
compliments, and I think I'm guessing that the next part of this presentation has to do with the fact that we have a hot commodity here at Dale Cemetery.
Yeah, we do.
Tell us about that.
Okay, over the last few months, there's been an increase in the number of graves purchased from individual parties who are associated with some organizations, usually church groups, that are not residents of the town of Ossining, with most of them residing in New York City or the surrounding area. Currently, I probably could tomorrow sell 50 graves right away to them. And I also received a call last week of a family association asking about purchasing about 100 grave sites in the cemetery. So,
And this is in addition to some of the other earlier.
well, we're still in early stages with the owner of Section 12 who wants to expand.
Right.
And that's going to probably accommodate 250 to 300 grave sites. So we're looking at the site work of that with town engineer, and that should be ready to go with those numbers pretty soon. So this
We're getting back to them to tell them how much it would cost for them.
yes, yeah,
That.
right.
Okay, just to be clear.
So this interest, I believe, is because our grounds are so beautiful, especially with the hilly terrain, and most grave sites faced east, which many organizations desire. Just roughly, there are probably 3,000 grave spaces available, so there's no concern that way right now, with 1,300 requiring some site work, such as tree removal, drainage, surveying, etc., especially along the middle school field. And future space may be available down the line. So realizing that and realizing that the town residents are funding part of the budget, I proposed the following fee changes for grave purchases. And residents of the town, there were two different prices. I'd like to just make all sections the same price for single depth graves of $1,900. and double depth graves at $2,400. This eliminates a $100 discount to Ossining residents and a lower fee in Section 9. Section 9 was $300 less. But there is a large demand with Section 9 now, so. Non-residents of the town, all sections, a single depth grave, $3,000, and a double depth grave, $3,500. And to determine if you're a resident or not of the town, it would be determined by the address on your cemetery deed and or a tax or utility bill or something to show proof.
So, I don't actually have any issues with the fees. Although if you, the non-resident, 3,000 and double depth 3,500, do you feel that's enough? 3,500 because you're giving up another.
It's just comparable to what?
Oh, they're usually within $400.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's my question.
That's-
I don't know.
That's been the norm, $400 or $500, yes.
So my suggestion with respect to the residents in terms of proof, it's not about the proof. I think that residents should be allowed to have 2 people buried there who are immediate family at a resident rate who may not live here. And yes, I'm
You don't
going
have
to
to
say,
live here. You just have to have somebody who lives here has to have
oh, okay.
their name on the deed.
So whoever it is who
Right, so
is
you're a resident.
buying the or paying for it, that
On the deed.
person.
Yes.
Name on the deed.
Okay.
So somebody, you need, like, that's the Ossining connection, basically. Like,
Got it.
okay?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, you know, if it was
Yeah, you
your
can say
family
me.
member,
Yeah,
right?
it's okay. You can use me as an example.
It will be on the deed,
Right.
right?
Is my name on the deed?
I don't remember.
Oh,
It probably is.
who knew?
But it could be, right? And then,
Who knew?
then it would be deeded to you and you
Got
are
it.
a resident of Ossining.
Pete, I just want to ask one.
Mhm.
And a double,
Great.
double depth.
Oh, yeah.
What's the depth? I mean, what's the depth?
Probably about 6.5 feet.
And then with the next one, you put it. How deep is that for the next one? Go on top.
Well, the vault is probably the depth of the vault. If it's a vault, we don't require a vault. The vault's about 32 inches.
So you
So the first one will go down. So that's let's say it's 3 feet. So you have another, 2.5 feet with maybe a foot of cover. They may go 6.5, 7 feet sometimes, depending on the soil.
that's what I meant. I know there was a time I remember they talked about 6 foot, but 6 feet, but time changes.
6 feet under.
Yeah, well, that was then. Who knows? I don't know what to do now.
BO show.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
But generally, people are 6 feet under.
So, we're inclined
Well-
to,
They're
we're
coming
not
back,
gonna do
right?
it tonight, but we would put it on for a regular meeting to approve the new fees. Are you inclined to do this?
I am inclined to do this.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. See how easy
Got
it
it.
was?
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
We're
Thank
not big,
you.
We're not big and scary.
I was listening
We've
to
been
you.
working on this for a while,
Pete,
so.
I was listening to you saying they did this and they did. You were there, weren't you doing it?
I know, yeah,
I
yeah,
set it up.
yeah, he was
That's
there.
all right. We
Yeah.
Managing.
Days of shovels in my hands are over.
got done because of you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. It was
Thank
really,
you.
you've done some great work. We're very, very happy to be so proud of all the great work at the cemetery. Thanks for the proposals, and I think that, this is gonna help us do even better. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Have a good one.
Okay, so where are we up to now? All right, so next I would like to invite Jared Rodriguez to join us. Jared comes to us from Emergent Urban Concepts, a consulting firm that has done some work for the town and village in the recent past. And the town recently hired Jared to help us re-envision North State Road through the lens of increased walkability and connectivity. Jared visited us a few weeks back and walked me through this presentation, and I'm very eager for him to share his ideas with the board and our resident. So, Jared, come on up.
Can I sit here?
Well, the only thing is that the microphone is there. There you go.
Can
You
you just
can.
hold it? Okay,
Yeah.
I can do that.
Or you can
that's
even
fine.
grab one
Can you
of
hear me?
those on the table. What about that right there? And then you don't have to hold it. You can grab.
Which is it?
Oh,
Oh, one of those.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Will that reach? Does it reach? No.
No, I can hold it. Okay. Does that work?
Okay, we got one. We got one, Tom. Run away. Right, I'm gonna step
You can have
aside.
mine, Maddie.
So I'm just
have
gonna
mine.
do a little bit more preface. Jared just hasn't. I don't know. How did we meet Jared? We met
I don't even remember.
through. What's that? Did Andy Stewart? Is he the one who put?
I think
in touch
so,
with
yeah.
you? Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
And he's town supervisor in.
In Orangetown.
Orangetown.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Orangetown,
And so I guess he was potentially looking to be a,
he put me out. He put
yeah.
me on your listserv. I think.
Right.
So I
Oh,
started
right.
Seeing all of your, you share a lot of information on a regular basis. Why don't you just
Right.
talk about that just for a little context?
Okay. Okay. So
okay.
yeah. So I've been sort of interested in zoning and planning and development for communities for, I don't know, it's probably going on 15 years or so. I work in the development field, mostly in energy and sustainability in New York, and then Emergent is kind of it's a side gig for me. Working with communities, writing grants. I helped the village with its downtown revitalization initiative grant this year, and the urban circulator project grant,
For the town and the village joint.
which is the town and village joint grant. And I've worked with the village of Haverstraw. I've had input on Nyack and Newburgh over the years, and then several villages in and around Boston. And so I think personally we're kind of hitting a point where things are changing very quickly in terms of what people prefer, like how to live, lifestyle, and then also with technology. So, the concept of autonomous vehicles is coming. Maybe we need to rethink how much parking we have, right? If you could just say, okay, car, go home while I'm at the grocery store, do we need to have a giant parking lot in front of the grocery store? So there's a lot of things changing that I think requires towns and villages to rethink how they deploy kind of across the landscape. And so there's a lot that you can discuss about this. I mean, it's kind of endless, social, economic. There's a lot of things that this impacts. So I can start here and just get through it. But I think mainly what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is the North State Road Corridor, two sections of it separately, and the urban form that's around there. And when I say urban form, I mean basically the size of buildings, the use, and then how those buildings relate to the public realm. And the public realm is streets and sidewalks, right? So I'll just get started on it. So this is kind of an interesting graphic, and I love Strong Towns. I really recommend that everyone go to strongtowns.org and start listening to Charles Marone, who's the president of this nonprofit organization. He is discussing fiscal responsibility for towns and villages, specifically municipalities. What can they do to create a more sustainable fiscal situation for themselves? And the way that is related to urban form is very important to understand. So, for example, and one of the things that I always think about is, again, how we're deployed across the landscape. And if you compare Europe, or you compare our old communities like the village of Ossining, compared to newer communities which were built after the automobile and after the advent of zoning, we're much more sprawled out. We require a lot more infrastructure to supply services to fewer people, and that is not a good recipe for fiscal responsibility. And we're starting to hit those barriers. We're starting to get to points where, and tipping points in the state of New York and elsewhere in the country, where we're not able to afford infrastructure and replacing first generation infrastructure that was built in and around the 1950s. So it's going to become a tremendous issue in the future, and I think everyone really needs to be aware of that. And when I say infrastructure, I mean roads and sewers and power and all of the things that serve each of these homes. So one of the things that Strong Towns always talks about is the strode. And so what is a strode, right? It's an amalgam of aspects of a street and a road. So do you guys know what the difference between a street and a road is? So a road takes you from point A to point B quickly. You don't have to, you're not being interfered with by pedestrians and other turning cars. You just get there and it's safe and it's quick. A street, you are dealing with a lot of other uses. So pedestrians and crosswalks and turning vehicles and parking vehicles and people moving in and out of retail and business. Other things happen on the street besides driving, right? Versus a road is for driving. And so this has kind of gotten blurred over the years because a lot of our streets function as roads, and a lot of our roads function as streets. And that's the advent of the strode. And a lot of people think that the strode is a very, very inefficient form of transportation development. And so one of the things that Charles Morono always says is, if you need to tell someone to slow down, if you need to put in a speed bump, right? If you need to put in even speeding signs, you've designed a road wrong, right? Streets that are supposed to be slow and they're supposed to accommodate human beings walking, right? Safe areas need to be narrower, and they need to have obstacles, and they need to confuse the driver so that the driver is careful. Believe it or not. So
Not necessarily thinking that.
Yeah.
Okay.
when a driver thinks that they can predict what's happening, they aren't paying attention. So 9 is a very good example. 9 is designed for 50 miles an hour, but we have people crossing it. So when drivers think that they can predict what's happening, usually it's not someone crossing when you're driving 50 miles an hour. This is why we have conflicts between pedestrians and drivers, which usually results in death. So the number one killer of children in the United States is automobile crashes. So I think that's something that we should think about. So just here's another graphic showing that issue. So generally on a limited access highway all the way on the right, generally safe, believe it or not. Moving at 65, 70 miles an hour, people aren't making turns, there aren't intersections, people are generally moving at the same speed. It is generally safe in terms of statistics. On the left side is the opposite of the 60 mile an hour highway. It's the actual street that's functioning as a street. A lot of pedestrian activity, retail, people living above stores, parking on the street, and kind of a blurring between where people drive and where people walk. That's the safest because generally cars are moving under 15 miles an hour. If you get hit by a car moving under 15 miles an hour, you might get knocked over, but you're probably not going to die. The worst is 30 to 50 miles an hour. So I don't know if you remember recently, New York City voted to reduce its speed limit to 25. I think the speed limit was 30, and that 5 mile an hour difference, basically if you're hit at 35, there's an 80% likelihood of death. If you're hit by a vehicle at 25, there's only a 20% likelihood of death. So that 5 mile an hour difference is a major difference. And so trying to reduce speeds on roads where there's human activity is probably in our best interest. So here's North State Road. I mean, you're all, I'm sure, pretty familiar with it. I think one thing to note here is the aspects of the street or the road that are both. So technically what we've got here is a strode. So yes, there's speed limits, but I'm sure a lot of people take those with a grain of salt. When I was visiting there, I saw a number of people gunning their engines and moving through quite quickly. You also have a lot of curb cuts. So there's great sidewalks here. I would say tremendous sidewalks for a road like this. Great lighting, a number of different uses, but there's a lot of things interrupting where people would typically walk. And so when I go through these pictures, think about yourself walking here. You know, would you feel comfortable coming out of a nail salon and walking what should be like a block, the equivalent of a block? Unfortunately, we don't really have blocks here. So whatever a block might be, maybe it's 300 feet, to go to some other business and cross the street. Would you feel comfortable walking by that facade? How does that make you feel? Right? So then what is the goal here? Is the goal to move traffic, or is the goal to create business and human activity? Or is the goal something in between? Maybe it is. I think that's a decision that needs to be made, and you know, that might require public outreach to make that decision. So again, a lot of environments where you have a lot of surface parking, it's not used 24/7, right? Most of this is vacant, or it's just parked cars. You know, the automotive shops are mostly parked cars. So yeah, maybe once a year these parking lots fill up, but usually they don't. So I would say, you know, when you're thinking about places, go to the place that you think is the most popular in the entire community, right? And look at its parking lot. It's probably the grocery store, right? And then go there when everybody's loading up for Thanksgiving and see, are there extra parking spaces? And you know what? There usually are. Like, we usually require more parking in our zoning code than is actually necessary on the busiest day. And people ask why. You know, why do we do that? Well, you have to look at the root of where these codes came from. And in the 1920s, the automobile industry and the oil industry was very involved in writing zoning codes, which dictated how we lived, right? So we require a certain pattern of development, right? We require homes to be far from retail. We require homes to be separated from retail and separated from each other. And we require long distances between homes and retail. And so that's to force longer distances of driving. And believe it or not, they were successful. So most Americans live in environments like this, and they're required to drive. So again, just looking at the pictures, think about, you know, does this incentivize you to walk? If that's the goal, if the goal is to get people walking, does an environment like this incentivize you to walk? And, you know, here's a tremendous, I think, asset for the community. I can't believe how many people use this recreational facility. It is incredible. Yeah. So one of the big questions I think that you have is, what do you do to build off of the success of this business? Because it's definitely a success. You could see that it's a success. And here's a parking lot that is full, which is kind of interesting.
Almost all.
Pretty much always full.
All day long.
So,
5 in the morning,
right.
9 o'clock at night.
Right. So what's really interesting is, how do you capitalize on that traffic, right? One of the results of good business is traffic. So how do you extract value from those people that are flowing through there? You know, one of the reasons why there are communities along the Hudson River is because of train stations, right? So you naturally have people flowing through, right? And so downtowns arrived as near to train stations as possible, because it's business trying to extract value from those people as they're flowing through, right? So business is actually looking to put up obstacles to slow people down so that they think about possibly spending money. When people are moving quickly and they're just trying to get through, they don't want to spend money. Isn't that kind of interesting? And I always use, I mean, this is not at all like this environment, but I always use Penn Station as an example, right? So we're kind of familiar with the area around Penn Station in New York. It's like kind of crappy, right? Right? And why is that? Because Penn Station's kind of like a black hole, right? As people get closer to it, they're speeding up just so that they can get out. They're not stopping and waiting and having fun, really. So the idea of slowing things down so they spend money sometimes makes sense.
The Grand Central Station isn't like that, and
Yeah, and you're willing to dwell there, right?
And it's still a place where you're supposed to
And
be
it's
hanging out.
beautiful. Yeah, and so business around Grand Central does significantly more well than business around Penn because it's a pleasant place where you're willing to slow down before you get on your train, which is kind of cool. So here's North State Road. This is the southern section. This is kind of turned, so it's not exactly showing north-south. And you're seeing pretty much all the businesses and all the curb cuts that are here. And there's 29 curb cuts.
Just to clarify.
Yep.
A curb cut is where a driveway or whatever goes in.
Yes.
Right?
And a road. Yeah. It could be an intersection, right? It's wherever the sidewalk is split, basically, and cars pass through. So there's a curb cut. Every curb cut is potentially an opportunity for a crash or an interaction with a human being. So, 29 curb cuts in a relatively short period. This is definitely a strode. You've got people trying to do activity here and other people trying to get through quickly. So I'm just backing up and talking about urban form. There's a lot of talk about how can you take places that are very much car oriented, right, where people aren't really willing to dwell and hang out, and turn them into places that, yes, you still kind of need a car to get there, right? Not saying no cars allowed. Yes, there are cars, but they become more pleasant environments for humans, right? So you don't go to Starbucks and sit outside in a cafe table in the parking lot, right? That's not really the most attractive place to sit. But if, say, this strip mall here had extensions that bring the retail or bring the storefronts to the street, kind of like what you have in downtown Ossining, right? Like a traditional downtown, and you create elements that reflect traditional retail, you could create environments that cause people to dwell and hang out and spend more money. And interact too. Here's another example, gas station into a corner store. So gas station doesn't have to go away. People are still generally driving to get there, but when you're crossing that corner on foot, you're interacting with a more pleasant, generally safe environment. Another example, this could be a Burger King, right? And what you're doing is you're creating opportunities for more retail, right? You're not getting rid of your drive-through, it's still there. But you're also creating housing and maybe office opportunities. So you're generally boosting economic activity here. So just going back to zoning, right? Is everyone familiar with zoning and the zoning code and how it works and adopting new law? Okay, so everyone understands what that is. So there's old zoning, which is Euclidean zoning. I would bet that that's what you guys have. Everyone has it, right? It was adopted via the Standard State Zoning Enabling Act in the 1920s, which was an act written by the U.S. Commerce Department. Why is the Commerce Department involved in dictating how we deploy across the landscape and how we live? Because the Standard Oil Company and a lot of these companies were involved in writing it, which makes sense. I mean, today we have Amazon helping to write laws related to e-commerce. I mean, is it a good thing? I can't say. That's a political decision to make, but this is what happened. We had companies that were involved mostly in the automobile industry writing how we deploy across the landscape. And so what did they do? They banned city blocks, believe it or not. There are laws that say, roads can't, when you subdivide, roads can't go through. They have to terminate inside the subdivision, and they need to start at the original arterial road. And what does that do? It creates branching, right? And it maximizes the amount that you need to drive to get from point A to point B. So one of the laws that could replace that is a minimum block size. You could require that in a subdivision. So if you are taking a large parcel and you're subdividing it, you could say that the public realm has to connect all the way through to as many roads as possible, right? So that's streets and sidewalks. And at most, each connection can only be 800 feet, right? So you're basically requiring city blocks, or you're requiring blocks and more connections. What that helps to do is alleviate traffic, because people can get through in more ways. They have more options versus being.
More to plow.
Does it make more to plow?
Yeah.
It depends. If every community has that and each block has one house on it, totally inefficient, right? Like what we were saying before, where you only have 100 people, but you've got 1,000,000 miles of roads,
Yeah.
right? There has to be a balance between how much business is happening, i.e. tax revenue, and how much public infrastructure there is. Yeah, there's totally a balance. New York City, their public infrastructure versus how much business is happening is very small. Up in Orange County, their public infrastructure versus how much business is happening is very large. And so arrangements like that up there probably don't have very long before taxes start spiraling out of control. That's kind of what happens. It goes from rural to exurban and suburban, and then taxes start to spiral because you're trying to give city level services to very few people. It's pretty much a numbers game. So going back to urban form and zoning. So this is Euclidean zoning, where they're dictating setback off of the street, height, density, use, things like that. And what do you end up with? You end up generally with a box, right? You're defining the envelope and where the building can sit on the parcel and generally how big that building is. So you can take Euclidean zoning and you can add a lot of other rules to it to make it potentially more attractive, right? You could take a Walgreens that in one community is just a box and require it to be something more attractive. And that's just kind of layering other rules on top of the zoning, right? So you could say a facade on the box has to be visually broken up. It has to have a turret. It has to have a gambrel roof, right? You could require street trees. You know, you could say that parking has to go behind or inside, you know, in the block so that you don't see it. Yes, you create something more visually active and maybe more pedestrian friendly than typical zoning, but people can kind of see through it because a lot of people have traveled, right? They've seen old towns. They kind of know what a more authentic town is versus like a new, less authentic, less charming town is. And I think people know that just generally. They kind of feel it inside when they see real versus fake, right? You can't really, I mean, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it is still a pig, right? So there's something new called form-based codes, right? And form-based codes can basically say, let's look at what we have already. We can decide to keep it because we like it, right? And we could also decide to make it change over time because we want something new or something different. And you could do it street by street. And you could basically say, what we have on this street are single family homes. They're generally this far apart. They generally have mansard roofs or gabled roofs. They all have porches that we like. And they have a garage, a single car garage in the backyard. And you can define that shape going forward. So if someone comes along and demos the house or the house burns down, you're allowing them to recreate something very similar to what's on that street. So you're maintaining the fabric, right, the design fabric of that street. In commercial areas, you could say, you know, we have retail on the ground floor and we have housing or offices above. The buildings have to come to the sidewalk. You can't set it back because that might change the dynamic of the street. So form-based codes can be implemented. They are being implemented across the Hudson Valley now to I think, great success. and in places where they're trying to change that visual dynamic in a particular area, and also to boost business. So remember I was saying like authentic places versus not. So this is a place in Vermont where you have what is a road, right, coming into town, slowing down, getting more narrow, with a public realm where all the houses generally match the offset from the street, and it creates a positive, visual experience, right, where people are willing to stop and shop. So this is Weston, Vermont, historic downtown that was then converted into a lot of retail, colonial houses, and country store. And this is a very, very successful town with, millions of annual visitors. Here's another view of a traditional town. And I think one thing to always think about is in traditional America, right, before cars, how did people live, right? How did they build their buildings compared to the street, right? And so most of these houses or stores or blacksmith shops, they're kind of lined up. They have a street wall because that's where business happens. It happens along the sidewalk. There's an area for vehicles or transportation, and then there's an even larger area for activity, and again, business and social activity and interactions. So here's an example in Armonk of the version of zoning where you take traditional zoning and you layer on new rules to create something more appealing. They had a number of strip malls here along their traditional main street. There were probably traditional buildings there prior that either burned or were demolished and replaced with a strip mall. And the zoning that they put in place layered on design requirements that tried to recreate that traditional downtown look. So you can kind of see it here where you have two relatively large buildings. Can you see? Yep, two large buildings here, and another large building here, which is a grocery store, where the design requirements makes them appear like they are multiple, different buildings on the public sidewalk. And they here have a pedestrian-only street, which is really interesting, connecting the existing downtown with some decent parking here that gives people access to all these restaurants and stores. And so here's the result, right off downtown, pedestrian-only street, kind of like a public square where people can congregate, events can happen, and people can shop and meet and go out to dinner. I would generally say it's a success. But what's the difference between this and a traditional, historic, authentic downtown? It kind of looks a little bit off and fake. Like,
Stop 14 on Maddie's favorite restaurant.
yeah, right. Oh, it's got good restaurants. It's got good restaurants. But when the next one comes along that looks better than this, will those restaurants leave and go there? I don't know. Will this always be successful? I don't know. I think Disney might do a better job at recreating a main street than that. And all it is just comparing it to what you have currently, like what's historic, and what the developer is proposing. And usually they try to cut corners, and it doesn't end up being the best. And everyone should want, in my opinion, they should want the best for their community. Right? You have incredible historic buildings. They should be paired with new incredible buildings. And that's something that you could actually require. So, going back to authentic places, all we have to do is look back to when the country was founded, and into the 1800s, into our existing communities where we have old places that pre-exist zoning, right, that were here before there were any zoning rules, and look at what's attractive about it. And usually it's because they're on the sidewalk, right? And they have nice architecture. So this is kind of funny. So just understanding scale, right? Understanding the size of places, how they relate to streets, thinking about how big is a strip mall compared to downtown Ossining? How much space is that parking lot actually taking up? How much space is that arterial road actually taking up where business might otherwise occur, where tax revenue might otherwise be generated? So this is a village in Sweden. It's a medieval market town, right? So it was built way before the idea of the automobile existed and way before any zoning code existed. It's still here, and it attracts over 10 million visitors per year. It's a tremendous success. And it could have been demolished. You know, there are a number of places in Europe that were demolished because they thought that they were defunct. But in some places they said, nope, we're going to preserve this because it's our history and we want to show it off. And so now 10 million people per year come through here and they spend a lot of money because it's gorgeous. I mean, it's an incredible place where people want to be and congregate and meet and shop and eat, right? You know, we had this. We did have this here. You know, it's not like we didn't have this. We had villages that were surrounded by greenery and open space. We did have it. We just filled it in. We filled in all the open space. And we're still trying to. We're still trying to do it.
Not we, but
Yeah.
developers are still trying every open space they can find.
Right. And part of that, you know, is a function of the kind of zoning that we have. So if you require a developer to take his property and cover it with 80% parking, right? They can make a return on that deal, but not a great return. They can't make a fantastic return. So they're going to keep looking to do a lot of those deals. And then that means that you're covering your town with more and more parking. Right. Okay, North State Road. I think, yes, this is the northern. Oh, actually, going back, that's Jakobborg, Sweden, actually, at the exact same scale. So if you took that 10 million visitors per year, you plopped it on the rec center, the gym, that's basically the size of this place. Isn't that incredible? So you just think about scale and you think about what we're doing. We live so differently than, you know, even people that live in the village here. You know, there's people that really only live within 4 blocks and they're living their life in a small scale versus a lot of us, me, you know, I'm commuting 2 hours each way to work. I'm living on this giant metro area scale, and I just want to get through as quickly as I can. So, you know, things that are in my way aren't really that good. But if I could live on a scale like that, I probably would. You know, it's just super expensive because we're not allowed to build places like this. So like there's no other place in the country like the West Village, right? I'd love to live there, but what is it, $4 million minimum?
A month.
A month? It's because we're not allowed to make places like that. So they're expensive. Okay, so this is you know, going back to North State Road. You know, just thinking again, what do we have here? We don't have a place where you want to walk. We've got 29 curb cuts and a strode. What can we do to change that? And so the real decision is, do you want this to be a road or do you want it to be a street? I think that's the main question. And if you want it to be a road, well, then we've got to get cars through here quicker and more safely. And so that means less options to turn. So what can we do to reduce some of those curb cuts? And it's probably consolidating them, creating a number of cross streets, and then maybe back alleyways that connect a lot of this existing parking so that everyone doesn't need their own driveway to the road. See what I'm saying? A lot of this parking goes right up next to each other and they'll put a little fence between them So like even if I parked at the tile place and I wanted to walk next door, I couldn't because there's a chain link fence between them. So I think coming up with a way to allow these building owners to consolidate parking, maybe require them to have less parking, or say, yes, you can build something and we won't require you to have the maximum amount of parking if you create a connection to your neighbor. I think that that could be really powerful because you're rationalizing the road. So you could reduce it to 4 curb cuts with rear alley access, and you really haven't killed off any parking. In fact, because you've taken curb cuts away, you've probably increased parking, because where that driveway was, you could put parking spaces. So we're not talking about eliminating parking here because we know it's necessary. People here are driving. But it could probably be done in a more rational way versus everyone for themselves, and everyone's got to have their own parking, right? Okay, and then so looking at the urban form and looking at the buildings, if we can get to this point where we've created, basically, what does that remind you of? Small blocks, right? And back driveways, back alleyways. You could look at your existing buildings, right? See how they relate to the street. A lot of these have parking in front of them, and a lot of these buildings are set back off the street. So it's creating an environment where you're more likely to want to drive versus walk through here, right? Lots of parking. It's not really that great to walk through a parking lot. Would you consider, if this area was more walkable, allowing building owners or property owners to add additional buildings and or green space? And then you could take the thing that was a Strode and you could create it into something a little bit more rational and a lot more like a traditional downtown. Or not. You could decide to go the other way. So there's a potential to create something like a downtown here, just with a relatively easy change to the zoning code. And, you know, we talked a little bit about this in our last meeting, what kind of code changes. Well, it really is like a form-based code, and you could do it as an overlay, right? You could make an amendment to the zoning code and do an overlay in this area that allows the area over time. I mean, we're not saying this would happen overnight, probably take 50 years. Yeah, 50 years from now, you might have something that resembles that place in Weston with the country store, maybe, right? Or it's something in between because it's on its way. I don't know
There's a
what
stream
happened
of-
there. Uh-oh. You don't have my font. You don't have my font downloaded. That stinks. So basically, there's options here, right? So reduce the...
It looked like Greek.
Lots of options. Reduce the curb count, right? Think about the zoning there. Try to rationalize the amount of curb cuts that happen by giving building owners and landowners more options. Like incentivize them to do it, and then rationalize parking by giving them more flexibility in how much parking they require. If, say, their business hours are 8 to 3, right, and they need some parking at that time, but the neighbor's business hours are 4 to 11 at night, right, it's more rational sharing of parking spaces. So this is the northern side of North State Road. It's definitely less walkable. Just if you look at it today, it's less walkable than the southern end. This is definitely more of a... Yep.
So,
Club
so
fit.
when you say northern, we feel like it's east-west. Like it's an
Oh, do
east-west
you?
road.
Okay.
Yeah.
It feels east-west to us. Because,
Yeah.
because we have
That's so weird.
9A, which is vaguely
Yeah,
north-south, but 9A
it's
kind of
technically
curves, yeah.
like...
And
It technically is
100,
north-south.
Yeah. No, it's true, but it feels east-west. I think for most of us,
It's east-west.
It's
that's
east-west.
what we feel.
Okay, so I changed it,
Uh-huh.
right? I turned it.
Yeah. But it's
So
not
it is,
south.
so here it is east-west. Yeah. Okay, so the east side has Club Fit. It's got a number of businesses, but less active businesses than what's on the west side, right? West side's got, I think, more restaurants. There's just generally more like office and active business, so a lot of people are going there and they're doing business. versus this side seems to be more contractors, automotive, and club fit, right? And there's some townhouses and some residential, right?
CCA and storage,
Yeah, storage, right. So this, in my mind, this area wants to be more like a road, right? To get you to the area that wants to be more like a street. Again, both sides could be a street or both sides could be a road. It's a decision that has to be made. And then you've got Mega Club Fit, which just here, it's probably 70% parking, which I guess is necessary because it's a regional center for fitness. But go back to thinking about Sweden for that town. You would draw from the entire Northeast if you had something like that. So that's the question. I actually saw a really interesting article about the owners of Club Fit, and they're arguing over a redevelopment of a mall. Did you see this? So they went to another town where a mall was being redeveloped. Is it? Yeah. And so they want to do something like a Club Fit in the old mall, but then also start adding outdoor retail and housing and make it more of a mixed-use center. And the owners of Club Fit were like, holy crap, this is going to compete with us. It might end up being better, and it might put us out of business. So they're
They
fighting.
own one there too.
Do they?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A different one.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Right. And so like this is a different kind of model than that kind of model. But if we're looking at how people are changing how they live, they kind of like the new model better, even though this is very successful. Right? So when the next one comes along that does better than that, you could pop into Club Fit but also go to Whole Foods, right? That one might beat this, right? And because it's regional, it's relying on a big area to draw people, they are vulnerable.
Well, you know what's interesting? I mean, we've been talking about a bike lane, and the bike lane connects, we're hoping that it's going to somehow connect right around here. Club Fit is very interested in partnering with us on this.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
for the reason that, it has potential to connect to also neighboring Millwood. Millwood just opened up to Chico's.
Yeah.
There's you could almost make an argument for, as we make some of these connections with bike and pedestrian access easier, you could get there from Club Fit to Chico's in what, 10-minute walk maybe? If you felt like walking, or a bike ride, it's not that far.
Right.
It would be about a 20-25-minute walk. It's farther than you think.
But a 10-minute bike ride?
Yeah,
Walk
a
quick
bike ride,
too.
whatever.
Bike ride would
5-minute
be
bike ride,
5-minute ride. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, it could be if you want to add to your fitness regime
Right.
and go shopping,
What's really interesting is, I mean, I know that they're annoying, but the cyclist population from no, seriously, from they can be, right? But because they're conflicted with vehicle traffic, they're sharing the road with vehicle traffic. That's what makes it annoying and difficult and dangerous. But they are spending so much money in these communities. I mean, Nyack is, I would say, 20% of Nyack's business comes from the good weather period and cyclists. There are specific businesses that are floated specifically because of the cyclists. And so there's a tremendous opportunity if you're creating a safe route, right? And you're creating these obstacles to slow people down, to stop. There's a lot of revenue to be generated from that, and tax revenue. So
Did you take into consideration that we are looking at putting a bike lane?
yeah. So that's one thing that I'm looking at. So trying to figure out, and that's not in this presentation, it's something else. But trying to figure out, are there any routes that stick out where you could create bike routes that are more safe, right? So not necessarily mixing with traffic,
I have to share the presentation,
Yeah.
the work from
We have a bunch of proposed routes.
Yeah.
task
Yeah.
force with you.
No, I mean, I'd love to look at it and help you guys with that. Yeah. So, what can you do here? If this is more of a road, maybe the answer, is not having 31 curb cuts, and having a strode here, but again, trying to rationalize the entries and exits where possible. So there's a lot that can be eliminated and consolidated and reduced. And then maybe this is an area of redevelopment. You know, maybe it is a town center, right? So versus centering it on your existing road like the other option, right, where you're allowing retail right there, you know, maybe you're rethinking this area as the potential for a master developer to come in, consolidate the properties, and do something like a large town center. Not sure. I think that's a decision that has to be made.
Well, what do you do with the business owners that are happy there now?
So the business owners that are happy there now would continue doing their business until someone gives them an offer that they can't refuse. I mean, that's basically what zoning is. It's all about the money. So if the automotive shop across the street, or, you know, Club Fit.
It's a child care center and
Yeah. I mean, if the rules change suddenly, right, and you could create a town center there, all of a sudden the values go higher, and uses that are currently there could potentially be replaced with higher value uses where you can make more money. And you'd be surprised how quickly everyone would become aware of that and how things would change. And so that's the strength of zoning. You can hold all of that back. Like, by all means, hold it back if you have an anti-development bent. If the community doesn't want anything to change, don't change anything. But if it does want to change, or if you do want to make change, zoning is ultra powerful in that way, because you literally change the economy, you change the equation. There you go with the options again. So I kind of said what the options are. You could do an overlay there. You can zone for a town center using traditional zoning. So here's an example, kind of using traditional zoning. Again, the big buildings, right? Parking garages, but with, treatments to the exterior that makes it look like multiple buildings and historic buildings. This is right outside of Yukon in Storrs, Connecticut. So Storrs, Connecticut is very, very rural, and there were a ton of strip malls here. There was like a Pizza Hut, grocery store, and Yukon never had a town, right? And, you know, students were actually like embarrassed by it. They're like, oh, you know, come to Yukon. Is there a bar nearby to go hang out? No, but we could go to Pizza Hut. Like,
We weren't old enough to drink it.
yeah, no, right, sure. Well, seniors.
Your
But-
parents didn't go.
Yeah, right. Right, there was no nice place to stay. You know, you couldn't go out to a nice dinner. It was generally a rural area, like kind of with a Walmart, you know? And Yukon said, no, like, no. Town, get your act together. Change the zoning here. We'll be a party to it. We'll help. But change your zoning so that somebody can do something with their property and let us have a downtown. Because the number one requirement of incoming freshmen now, like taking polls and asking them what they want a college town. Generally, right? Yes, like college rank and programs and all that stuff. But you've got students choosing places based on the environment that surrounds the community or the campus. So they built their college town from scratch. It's around a town square. You know, they
Happy because we have 3 women here with college students.
right. They want
yeah,
to.
no,
they
that's
want to
not
go
why
out.
my kids chose it. They totally went with the degree programs.
Just the program.
No, the little one won sports.
Yeah.
I mean, he was about there should be a sports on campus,
Right.
but it wasn't.
They didn't
and
think
the other
about-
one's in the middle of pretty much nowhere, but that's it.
They didn't think about what is the environment like, what's the town like, what's the city like. It was
They
just
don't
the
really go
college.
off campus that much.
But
Yeah.
Binghamton might. Yours might.
Binghamton's the land of the strip malls and the Walmarts, and then whatever towns that part of the old town that they have left is really depressed, and
Right.
so the life revolves on campus, and then
More
it is-
campus
it-
focus.
But it is not as welcoming an environment or as social an environment as to to integrate with the college doesn't integrate in that regard with a very, very distressed town.
Right.
So the town's not really getting the benefit of having
Sure.
a huge, a huge university there.
Right.
So.
Well, when you see the connection between the campus and the town happen, or a new town get built, the economic growth is incredible.
Right.
Because then the students, where you've got this captive audience, there's a lot of money on campus, right? Believe it or not, like they.
As long as we know.
I know, right? Well, they got their parents' debit cards, but there's a lot of money, right? And once it's released, it creates incredible growth. But that's a whole different conversation.
So your point is, if back to North State Road,
Right. And here's an
if
example.
you change zoning to allow not to be restrictive in a way that's going to be what you want, but not restrictive in a way that we're sitting with our 40s for everything and tax and all that.
Yeah, right.
Then you're saying that there's possibilities, even if it could take 50 years, or there's possibilities of attraction from some developer who then finds out somehow.
That's if you want that, right?
No, I understand.
Yeah, if you want to incentivize that.
Let's say you're looking for some part of dynamic. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you have to change your whole footprint.
Right.
You can, but the point is, at that point, you can utilize zoning
To create change.
to create change.
Yeah.
And
And the
but
change
I
that
think
you
the second part is-
want. Yeah.
Right. I think the second part of it is, though, to create change, but how do you create that change, not just by the zoning, but also attracting the people who are going to do it, or the thought process, right? 'Cause
Right.
sometimes when I think about it, and I think of how steeped it is, and when you talk about
Steeped.
in tradition or
Just wanted to make sure it said
past
steeped.
or this is just what we do.
You mean the community or in general?
Yes.
People are afraid of change.
Not wanting to
Yes.
change. Right.
Well, and one of the
Well,
things,
and even when you talk about your business owners, and,
Right.
and even taking down the chain. I mean,
Right.
like some parts of it, you don't have that problem. If you're behind Maya Riviera, that parking lot between the three of them is this big.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
to your point, it can be done. How do you incentivize
right.
your businesses?
Right.
And the other thing that we talked a little bit about when Jared came to me is about how we just been through this long haul process and didn't really get very far with rezoning. Some of the stuff that we were looking at in Croneville, because exactly what you said, kind of push back
Mhm.
business owners who fear that they're going to lose value if you change their zoning to something different, and also safe streets, all the different kind of things that we have been talking about over the last year. But one of the other things that we talked about with North State Road and some of the businesses there is that, wait, you don't have any place else for this. You're getting rid of all of the space for certain types of businesses,
Right. Like automotive. Yeah.
like automotive, and you may want to have some of those sprinkled in also.
Right.
And you mentioned Gowanus.
Yeah. So this is kind of a
Talk about
cool.
that a little bit.
Yeah. So Gowanus. Actually, can I talk about that? Like, I'll just get through this and then I'll talk about it. So, going back to like attracting the single developer, right? The issue that I have with that personally is that you get something that's built all at the same time. So even in this case, it looks a little bit fake. Maybe over 100 years, some of these facades will change, things will change, and it will look more authentic. But it's hard to do. That's why I like form-based codes, because you split up places into smaller parcels, and there's a lot of developers, and it happens more incrementally, and it happens more naturally over time, which I think ends up creating a better place.
I don't know if any of you have spent any time, but I spent a lot of time in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta, and Alpharetta, and Avalon. I think it's the same developer that
Yep.
did Avalon up here, developed a whole planned community. So
Yep.
it's all mixed use. They have a lot of housing, different levels of housing, sort of on the outskirts, and then in the center they have a giant movie theater. It's like a mall, but it's an outdoor.
Like in Nanuet, kind of, right? Have you seen that, the shops in Nanuet?
Yeah, so it's an
Like a
outdoor
lifestyle center.
Right, a lifestyle center, and they have a gym and they
It's
have
like
concierge
Ridge and
parking.
Ridgeview.
Yeah, right.
Ridge Hill and.
Right,
Right.
right.
I know,
To
man.
him, to his point,
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
that's
It's
that
kind of,
Like,
it feels fake.
look.
It doesn't, it feels like piped in, like
That there it is,
Disney.
right? There, I mean, there it is. Like, it's decent. It's better than a Walmart and a strip mall, but meh.
What is this?
This is the Yukon thing.
Oh, Yukon.
So it's
It
it's
looks
o-
just like Avalon.
it's okay, but it's like, you know. And then just thinking about traffic, I will get to the Gowanus thing. Don't worry. Don't even go there. I know I want to skip it, but legit, this is the way to do it. I mean, you used to have queues backed up here, traffic queues in Manchester, Vermont, which is an outlet town. It's a cool colonial town that now has a lot of retail and outlets in it. And the traffic would back up for, I'm not kidding you, 8 miles on either end because of a traffic signal and stopping sign.
in a non-traditional downtown,
Hmm.
so it's different.
No, this is a traditional downtown here, but this is a tiny
Right,
one.
so that's very true.
Yeah, this was an original kind of three-way intersection with stop signs, and they plopped this one in, and they didn't even really change the intersection configuration. This one's bigger. Yeah, this is like almost more like a traffic circle. But when they did it, the traffic disappeared, and it's safer. There's less accidents and there's less pedestrian fatalities.
We don't have that problem on North Sabre, which is
No, well, on either end. So how do you slow people down? It's a way to do it.
On either end, where?
Here's another example of taking.
like, now let's not talk about it.
No, I know.
To her point, let's just move on.
but taking an existing, this is not going away. You will have one in your town eventually, and whether the state puts it in or not, you
That's
will.
a nice bookstore right there on the corner, by the way. Who's
Oh,
the
in
owner that
Manchester?
implements it? Right there.
So
It's a
nice.
really nice bookstore.
But so then the one on the right-hand corner is an example of an existing intersection in a residential area, and they just plop one in the middle. So questions or goals. What are the goals, right? I mean, it probably requires public outreach to figure out what the goals are. And the goals are required to figure out what your next steps are. You know? Yeah, so I'll talk about Gowanus. Can I get on the internet? Let me show you. So,
No, just because I thought it pertains to North State Road.
yeah, it does. It definitely does.
Well, because that was an example that he used, and I thought it was interesting because it mixed sort of manufacturing, like light manufacturing maybe.
Yeah.
With,
No, it really does. So I don't know if you're familiar with that area.
I want to. The Gowanus area?
yeah.
Yeah.
So your main recommendation is to get rid of the cuts and try to get the.
I would say that's probably your first step. I can't get on the internet. Yeah. All right, so basically, hold on, I think I can do it. All right, cool.
Brownsfield over there?
Yeah. You might have brownfields over here already because you've got automotive shops, and they might have to be remediated. But basically, yeah, you got a brownfield here. The entire canal is got toxic sludge in the bottom of it. It's horrendous, right? But it's actually the coolest neighborhood probably in Brooklyn right now. Why? Because they changed the zoning, and so they took an area that is a lot of, there's automotive, there's steel workshops, there's concrete manufacturers, cabinet makers, tile makers. It's all here. There's a Home Depot, right? So there's the big retail, and they started changing the zoning to allow different things, right? So allow a grocery store, but it can't just be any grocery store. It has to have a lot of certain aspects to it, like outdoor dining, right? It has to relate to the canal in a certain way. If you build a space, you have to create like a public realm. So they required Whole Foods to do a public promenade along the canal here. It smells really
Yeah, I was
terrible.
gonna say, is that canal somewhere you want to eat?
But it is really cool. It's really awesome, and they're cleaning it up.
Like the daylighting of the sawmill.
Yeah. So they're cleaning it up. So eventually, right? This is all now redeveloped into residential, big public promenade here. Eventually, you're going to have a canal area of Brooklyn that feels like Europe. Over time, it probably will take 50 years, right? But right now, there are great restaurants mixed in with steel workers, tile makers. There's cool bars that are in the back of a literally beer distributor. You go into the beer distributor warehouse, and in the back there's a bar. People like this stuff. They kind of like the juxtaposition between the manufacturing and the industrial and art and music and entertainment and food. They like that mix. And so there may be a way to do that on North State Road, right? You've got tile makers. So what could pair with a tile maker? Artists, right? Seriously.
Why don't you have the
Mosaics,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, mosaics.
He said, come on, people.
But who knows? You never know. But when you start to change rules and you make things more possible, you kind of don't know what's going to happen, which is kind of interesting. So I think that's something that you have to think about. Maybe it is some weird mix, or maybe it's the mix lasts for 15 years and it's cool while it lasts, but then it's changing into something else. Right? That's a sign of a good place. It's a place that changes and evolves and adapts and grows. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily live here, but a lot of people want to. Yeah, Kiwanis. I would, of course, live in Austin.
Where do you live now?
I have a gutted house in Tarrytown. It's a mess. Sleepy Hollow. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
So that's it. Yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
so as far as next steps, I think we should kind of talk a little bit about our reactions to the presentation, and then what we might want to think about as we.
I have a question. Does the stream wet area behind the buildings on North State Road
Right.
interfere with your idea for a
no,
drive?
no.
Because
So
a lot of that area is paved anyway, but so you keep it close enough to the buildings.
you could
and
keep
not
it
near the wet
right.
part.
So one of the things we talked about was apparently there are complaints between the residential areas and some of the businesses that are there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you
Both
could-
sides.
Yeah, right. So you could use it as an opportunity to create a buffer, right? And maybe de-pave some of that area and require plantings like a buffer to split off those residential areas from the commercial areas, right? So a lane could actually help you because you're keeping business further away, right? You might require like a berm, a planted berm, or a wall or something. If they want to redevelop and they want to renovate their building, you might require some kind of, intervention to split off the residential areas from the commercial areas to help with that. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I think that there's an opportunity to do that, especially if buildings are moving closer to the street over time.
I mean, I think that's one of the, for me.
Yeah, our
one
current
of the
setbacks
most
are
interesting
away
things
from the street.
that you
Right.
talked about is
Yeah,
how
which is- didn't
setbacks
make
were
it-
always asking everybody to go away from the street.
Yeah.
Having
You
bringing
help.
everything closer to the street is more conducive to pedestrian, right? I mean, if you think we have these great sidewalks on North State Road,
Yeah, right.
but nobody wants to walk on them
Walk on
because
them.
it's so far away from the entrance to any of the establishments.
You know
there.
where I think that's terrible? In the wall greens in the village. First thing you
Yeah.
see is a big parking lot.
Right, and that's, I mean, and a lot of,
That
in a
should
lot
have
of
been
cases, that's what you were saying.
built front and then had parking.
Well, the post office, right?
Right, the post office,
Yeah.
right, all those.
It's like a blank
Yeah.
The
wall.
post office is built on a weird, like
I know,
that building is not built straight.
right?
So your parking is kind of like off to the side in a weird way, but
It's on the sidewalk, but it's like a blank wall, right?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we've all
you have that
commented
whole
on how
division
fetching that
easy,
is.
But that Walmart when that was built, well, but it was a Big Lots and stuff before then, so they just built it in that same area.
Yeah. Oh.
No.
Okay, it's late. I'm
Yeah.
taking up a lot of your time.
Okay. So anyway,
Thank you though so
Yeah.
much.
thank you. This was really, I thought this was really
I mean, I'm
great.
I'm
give
happy
us-
to help you guys and guide you.
Right, and I think that we should talk, a little bit. We don't have to do it tonight, but we can come back to it.
Yeah.
If you wanna
I'd
talk
like
about
to
it.
hear his thoughts on the proposed bike routes. So I'd like to, get his feedback from.
If you have roots,
Yes, we have
Proposed.
proposed routes,
That-
yes,
yeah,
which
sounds
I
good.
can send those.
happy to help you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Will do.
All right.
Thank you so
All right.
very much.
All right, Jared, thanks so much for your time, and we'll be in touch with
Yeah,
you
sure.
a little bit on follow-up. Does anybody have any other questions for Jared before he leaves about?
If you
And we can find him, I'm sure.
if you have questions, Dana has my email. Anybody can email me.
Okay,
Okay.
you do. Yeah, you want to talk a little, yeah, Christy, talk a little bit for a minute, 2 minutes about form-based code and what your experience has been. Yeah.
Oh, we just, we represented municipalities, Mount Vernon actually, doing form-based and then hybrid-based, which is kind of a combination. So, I mean, it's a complex process and it does require a lot of advanced planning, because you do, as Jared was saying, you have to be thinking, very far ahead. But it does create opportunities for more consistency throughout, in terms of appearance, in terms of uses. You can identify those uses that are existing and that are more appropriate for specific areas. In Mount Vernon, it was focused a lot on transit-oriented development because they have 3 train stations. That might not necessarily be the case here. So now you have to try to accommodate it more, obviously, to car and pedestrian travel and cyclists and whatnot. It would require seeker review, which could be lengthy. I mean, it's a big project undertaking, not to say that it's not completely worth it. And, I'm not as familiar with the specific location of North State Road as obviously everyone else is, but it's certainly something to consider and look into. But, community input would certainly, I think, is a great suggestion. It might be a good subject for a town hall meeting.
I mean, just to share a little tiny bit of my thinking, which is that, we just kind of got through finishing, trying to finish up our comp plan, right? We're making, which was from 2002 originally, right? 2002. And then it was updated a couple of times, maybe 2005, 2015. There were updates to it. I think, and I just heard last night that the village is about to tweak their comprehensive plan. I think it might be an opportunity for us to consider a new comp plan, if we want to, or, because this isn't part of it, right? This would be a new way of thinking. I don't necessarily know that it fits into the comp plan that we currently have, and certainly it would be it's a long-term project that would require a lot of community input, and maybe we want to do it in stages, and but I think it might also be something that we want to consider doing with the Village of Ossining simultaneously and collaborate, and sort of look at that bigger picture of how do all these pieces fit together, and the notion of transit-oriented development does come into play because we have RB line buses, and we want to start connecting our transportation hubs to by pedestrian and bicycle access, and connecting up with our open spaces and as well as our business centers. So I think that it's a kind of a big picture thinking, but if you don't start planning it at some point, you're never going to get there. And I think, again, if we all just think of ourselves in our little units and our little municipalities as separate, then that's what we're going to continue to have. But if we kind of think more regionally and broadly, then maybe we can get something different.
But then you have to add the Village of Briarcliff to that,
Yeah.
because
Yes,
part of
absolutely.
that whole road.
Yeah.
And so another 2 resources that you guys should look at is, and you probably know, PACE Land Use Law Center. Yeah, so that's
And we're
huge.
working with them actually on
Yeah.
a grant to look at. We have which I think we actually are now in a good place with the state. The state had identified 2 of the projects that we applied for as priority
Yep.
projects. not exactly priority projects, but on their list for the CFA grants, one of which was the urban circulator, and the other one was with Pace Land Use.
Such an ugly word.
Urban circulator.
It's a trolley.
I know, right? Well, we don't
Yeah.
know. It could be something else.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but it is.
Okay.
You say urban circulator, and everybody's like, "What is it?"
I
want
know,
people
right?
to know what it is.
Okay, right.
Trolley-
and the other one
trolley's
is
a good
the with Pace Land Use Law Centers to look at creating a comprehensive plan around healthy communities and creating
Perfect.
around healthy communities and looking at how you build a new comprehensive plan to incorporate that could lead us down this path.
Yep.
So perhaps if we're working with Pace on something like that, we could get into this notion of form-based codes and how that would make for healthier communities potentially. What would it allow us to do differently?
The form-based codes institute, like, will give you sample codes. Like you could look at it, you could see how it integrates and connects to a comp plan. And
Because opening up a comp plan is
it's tough.
Oh no,
yeah.
I know that. Again,
Sometimes there are ways to do this without opening a comp plan.
right.
But that requires legal advice.
Again, it's our
I'm looking at her.
it's comp plan is 15 years.
Right.
Was created 15 years ago with obviously tweaks and updates along the way, and it's not it's a living document,
Right.
but
The
nevertheless.
funniest thing that I heard, so I did the land use law,
training.
multi-day training. And the funniest thing that they said was, like, he looked at everybody in the room, and most people were from municipalities, and I was representing Havistraw. And they were just saying, like, you want all of these things. Like, you're trying to attract millennials, you're trying to create a vibrant downtown. And he's like, you are your own worst enemy. You are the master of your domain. You could write any rules that you want. This didn't come from, like, a god. These are flexible. You can write these rules. And so you're in control. The community's in control, and you represent the community. But you guys are in control, and you can decide what you want. You don't have to live with what you have.
But we are also representatives of the people, and
Of the people, yeah.
and the people also speak, and the people don't
The people are
necessarily
in
always
control. Yeah.
want something that's in their backyard,
Right.
that's different than what they currently have. So it makes it tricky. It's not a
It's a
simple,
negotiating
straight
process.
line.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a give and take
If we're a
on
straight
all
line,
sides.
we'd be there already, all of us.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you
guys.
so much. Okay, we'll
Take care,
be in
Karen.
touch. Okay. Anything else? Any other thoughts? No? Okay. All right. All right, next topic of discussion is final topic of discussion for our work session. After 5 years, it's time for the town to go out for an RFP for our refuse and recycling contract. We had some ideas about how to restructure the RFP that we shared with the board and with the public, and we asked our residents to reach out if they had any opinions on the matter. So we're circling back tonight to finalize this effort and get the board's okay to release the request for proposal. So I think that there's some key areas that are highlighted in the copy that you have before you. We are proposing 3 options. Maddie, do you want to take us through since you're...
So this is the same exact document as the town used in 2012 for the 2013 RFP. And just to clarify, in 2012, this was written so that whomever the lowest responsible bidder was who received the contract would get it for a 1-year period. And it was the town's option to extend it for an additional 4 1-year terms. So now I just want to clarify that we're never talking about a multi-year contract, unless that's something that the board wants. So the things that are really part of the conversation, at least for the purposes of what we discussed so far, are highlighted in yellow. So you see on page 2, that's what I just covered. And then really the meat of it, you don't find until page 6, 7, and 8. So what we had done last time was ask everyone who bids on the contract to bid on both options A and B. Option A is what we ultimately ended up with, was the status quo, basically, the 2-day trash pickup and the 1-day recycling pickup. Option B is still here, 1 trash pickup and 1 recycling pickup per week, just so that we can demonstrate the savings. It sort of, sounded like there weren't a whole lot of folks who were feeling too positive about that.
I like
But
that. Was there anybody who was feeling positive about that?
it's sort of difficult to say, because if they came in and they said, okay, for the twice a week pickup, it's going to be $800,000, but for the once a week pickup, it's going to be $300,000. We don't know what the difference is until we ask.
Well, we did last time, right?
We did last time. It was sizable, but we still had people who said no, but that was 5 years ago.
Unincorporated town.
It was 5 years ago, so who knows?
No, I like how you mitigate it. You're like, some people, there isn't a whole lot of, okay.
So what we also did was add a third option, which is option C, which is 1 trash, 1 recycling, and 1 curbside food scrap pickup per week. When we had the presentation from Michelle and Ron from the Village of Scarsdale, they mentioned that I think their estimate is 25% of household trash is food scraps. So basically, if you're taking out 25%, we thought, let's see what some of the folks who would be bidding on the contract might be able to offer us if we were to engage in that program for households. So when Michelle and Ron did it, they were talking about, they had sort of like the parking lot and like a municipal area or whatever. These would actually be the curbside.
I
Pickup.
love that idea.
And they actually believe, because of the success of their program where people are having to go out of their way to dump their own food scraps, if there were curbside pickup,
Even more people
it
would do
would
it. Yeah.
be enormous, because people do want to do something, but it has to still be easy. This makes it easy. And I think currently our current contractor, refuse and recycling contractor, actually has the bid for them. They're taking their food scraps up to Ulster. So they thought, at least it's not like there's nobody in the area who would be able to handle this, because they're already familiar with it. So again, we don't know whoever will come out to bid if they'll be able to handle this, but the idea that you take food out of that mix of trash or solid waste is going to significantly diminish the rest of your waste. So you're not going to, you still end up getting 2 trash pickups, but one of them's your food and one of them's the rest, essentially.
So that option C, begins on page 7 and then carries over onto page 8. We are going to be reaching out to Ron and Michelle over the next couple days to see if they have any feedback on how we would word this, if the board is interested in keeping it in as an option. And then bulk trash was the next part that we sort of tweaked. When we started this contract in 2013, and Suburban got the bid, bulk pickup was, I believe, once a month for 10 months out of the year. They found it possible that they could do it weekly. I'm not sure if it's 10 or 12 months a year. So we kind of updated that, and so now we're asking for it once a week, since now we know that at least it's possible.
And it wasn't an additional cost from the original contract. It does.
Letter G at the bottom of page 8. This is something that we sort of went back and forth with our parks foreman about. Included in the contract for the town, there had been, I believe, 2 dumpsters at Ryder, 2 at Gerlach, 1 at Cedar Lane. We had 1 at the police station. We had 1 at the highway department. We basically asked Mario what he thinks right now our needs are, so that we could include it in this. And so we've sort of tweaked the size of the dumpster and the numbers of the dumpster a little bit. So we have 2 trash dumpsters at Ryder, 1 at Cedar Lane. We added in the dog park. Do you sort of want to talk about why?
Well, dog parks are becoming another hub and another great use of parks, and we have this very appealing dog park, and I think recently written up in White Plains. Did you ever get that?
It was rated one of the top 10 in the entire country.
Right.
Repeatedly. So.
Right. So it's a great dog park, and we're getting a lot of use out of the park. So, however you feel about dogs or dog parks, our Cedar Lane Dog Park is getting a lot of use. So I think we should pay attention to it, and I think that we should treat it as an amenity that's in our park. So that being said, right now we have a dumpster that looks like it's from, I don't know.
World War
Yeah,
II.
so sort of talking to Suburban right now.
Why get a dumpster is my question, just because you have people and you want, why a dumpster?
Because there are poop bags. All the poop is put into the holders,
Well,
and every
right.
day it's taken out.
I see.
No, there's
I'm
a
just
lot
asking.
more dogs up
No,
there
no,
than
no, I
right
get
now.
it. I'm asking, I don't go up
Mhm.
there.
Right, so it's a small.
And-
it's a small
I
dumpster.
don't know.
From what we understand, from Suburban, who also services that dumpster right now, it's not covered by the town. The dog park folks pay for that on their own. They make a call when pickup is required, which, as we understand, is quite infrequent at this point.
If they're gonna be
Um,
picking up anyway, why aren't they picking that up for us, you know?
Yeah, if they're in our park, and they just have to go up the hill a ways, it's also, I mean, probably more sanitary to have it picked up more often rather than less, I would imagine. So that's why we added that one in.
So, at no extra cost, or?
That's sort of the thing is when we were looking at the one from 2012, there's a lot of things in here built in about like no additional cost. Everything in here is inclusive of the bid that they're going to provide. So
Right.
basically by saying at no additional cost, it's sort of redundant because everything in here is what they're bidding on. So if we say, here's all the things you have to include in the bid, they're going to give us the price. And that's inclusive of the residential pickup, all of these other things that we're asking for the recycling, food scrap, so on.
I guess my question is, if the people in the dog park were doing it themselves and now we pick up the cost, what then?
I have a feeling it's gonna be nominal, cause like I
Okay.
said, they're already in the park picking up. So if we ask them to pick up that particular dumpster, if that particular dumpster doesn't seem to be needing to be dumped every time they go up there, they wanna pick it up every other week or whatever, you know, that can be something that we adjust based on what's actually in there. And they're not gonna have to dump it as often, but they're gonna have their truck up there and, you know, making the circle in Cedar Lane Park
Just
anyway.
checking on,
Yeah.
the fact that this was not a town thing, that became a town thing, and now we're.
Well, what happened is the dog park people used to pay into a dog park fund, kind of within that community, and now because of some of the
getting a
security
registration.
issues, there's a registration at the rec center. So instead of paying to the group that runs the dog park, they're paying into the rec department. So the money is now going to we need to talk about that
Which
town.
doesn't come to the town, though.
Yeah, it should. See, there's the thing. But anyway, it goes to the town because we're the ones servicing. That's a whole nother conversation.
Well, but we're talking about it, so I'm just highlighting the fact that this used to not be a town thing. That
But when we started collecting the fees for it, I can see it trend. And
No, I understand that. Once again, the town's not collecting the fees for it, so.
Well, the recreation department, which is, we utilize, the
Well,
town
on behalf of the
utilizes.
town is collecting the fees.
We have an IMA for a rec department, basically. We don't have the recreation department and the programming without the rec department that we have the IMA with.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Let's just say that there's revenue sources that are from the town that are not given to the town, and we can all discuss why. That's Cedar Lane Art Center as well. So everything out of Cedar Park seems to go to the village. I'm just doing a history lesson.
Right.
This particular thing did not used to be. I'm not advocating for against or for. It's a history lesson.
Sure.
This did not used to be a town thing. It was by people,
Mhm.
and that's why this was probably the way it was done. Once we start moving things and it becomes more of our responsibility, now the town taxpayer is paying for some of this stuff that wasn't, and now you're right, in the scheme of a full budget, it's probably not that much money, but I still think it should be noted. So when we start talking about, dumpsters for a specific group of people, you're not talking about the whole park. You're talking about a specific group of people who utilize. I'm just noting.
Well, it's
I
the
mean-
same as it by the pavilion. That's a specific group of people using the pavilion.
People
or
who
the,
use the pavilion pay $250 to
Okay,
$300
by the football field.
for
Yeah, by the football
pavilion.
fields and those, mostly that's people who play sports. I mean, you
So
could
they-
say the people
I don't know.
who use the Cedar Lane Art Center, people who do art, the people who,
No, I'm
use the
just-
community garden or people who garden. So
Those
the
are
thing
all
about-
taxpayers. So if these are all taxpayers, then that's fine. But the people who garden aren't.
Well,
I mean, what
okay, I mean, yeah, we don't do what a lot of other communities do. which is we don't look at the license plates and say you can't use our park, right? We don't do
Right.
that.
We don't do that.
We don't. I mean, is that something that you think we should do? Because like I personally think no. I'm just
Why-
asking.
Why are you going
No, because
there?
I'm going down there because you're separating out taxpayers from non-taxpayers, and I agree with you that that there are people coming from other communities that do not pay taxes to the town of Austin, so it doesn't go into the parks. Fund what funds our parks and our upkeep of our parks. There are absolutely people who do use the dog park who come from Newcastle,
But they pay.
but they pay a small,
Extra.
Right, they pay a small fee to use for the use of the dog park. The fee
Mhm.
is
I think $20 a year.
$20 a year. Okay, so
Well, I think an out-of-town resident's a little
But it
bit
was
more.
15 for residents and then maybe a little
25 for a non-resident. It's nominal, but
right, so it's a nominal fee that you pay, and again that might offset whatever the cost is of the dumpster. But there's
Well-
other issues.
Will they pay for it?
Well, who pay for it?
Well, the registration of the, that's not paying for it. What will?
I don't know
offset?
because I don't know how many are registered. We'd have to look. Yeah, I was saying that could potentially be the amount of money that it costs ultimately to however many registrants there are could ultimately be an offset for that.
I mean, we could also pull this out and say to whoever it is that gets the contract, what would you charge us a la carte for this dumpster to be cleaned out? And then we could, discuss it that way. I mean, this was just, as long as we're doing it with all the dumpsters and the recycling and whatever, let's throw everything in and then you guys can sort of, pare it down as you see fit. So that's why we put it in, because we thought it was a need that wasn't being met. If not everybody's comfortable, then we can take it out.
right. And then we saw. Have you talked to the boat club board about the 4-yard?
All right,
Dumpster?
so we have the one at Gerlach. We have the 2-yard at Engle Park, which was new this year. That actually wasn't in the contract, but Suburban was kind enough to add for us, and that's all the way over on the picnic area side. So I don't remember whose idea it was to think about maybe the Boat and Canoe Club one, because right now the Boat and Canoe Club, what
I believe that was you, Maddie.
was it me?
Yes, it was.
It might have been me. So the Boat and Canoe Club has their own dumpster, which I understand is serviced by a different contractor than what the town has. And in talking to Councilman Feldman, the boat club is sort of able to call up, just sort of whenever necessary and say, hey, we need to pick up. And so what we were thinking, or I guess what I was thinking, I don't know.
And we did talk to Mario about
Yeah.
it as well, I believe.
Because of its proximity to a town park, if we were able to either absorb or share in the cost with the Boat and Canoe Club, it would allow us to keep trash out of the dumpster on the other side that's being used for the picnic area. So sort of allow a greater capacity at that dumpster for the weekends. So that would also prevent the guys from having to haul the trash all the way from one side of the park all the way over to the other, or put it in their truck and drive it to a different park to access a dumpster. So no, we haven't talked to anyone on the board about it. Again, just floating it to see, if we're going to do this wholesale and then pull things out as we go.
It's worth a conversation and just, some events we fill that, the clam bake, we fill it twice, and, spring cleanup and fall cleanup and taking the covers off the boats, it gets filled repeatedly, and other times it's not used that much, but it's, it's an on-demand kind of
But it's a
it has a
two-yard-
regular
it's a two-yard.
pickup.
That's a 2-yard one that they have there now, or it's a 4-yard
We
one?
have two.
I don't know what's there
Or
now.
we have one now.
When talking to Mario about it today, he said a 4-yard because he thinks that wouldn't. So I guess, yeah, what you have there now is a 2-yard. If he's saying that that's an add capacity, a 4-yard would be what he would
Okay, yeah,
advise.
that's a conversation you really need to have with that board, so.
I gotta ask the question here about the dog park.
Okay.
Why do you need a dumpster for the dog park? People bring their garbage up there and put it in, or what?
People hang out up there, so they have drinks, they have lunch, they hang out with their dogs, they put their doggy poop bags in there,
Yeah, but
and you want to
It's the amount of dog food that,
you
there's
don't
a lot of
have- You
people.
don't have no dumpster full.
Well, that's why it's not
It's a
emptied
little-
that often.
It's a little 2-yarder, it's
A
a
tiny one.
small.
Yeah, we have a
Dumpster.
4-yard at the boat club.
It's
We
little.
have a big one.
It's not a big dumpster. It's a little one.
Okay.
I just saw it the other day.
And people bring up chairs for people to sit in, and they get ruined quickly from the dogs, and they get thrown in there too. It's usually what's in there if it's bulk.
Okay.
And then we kept in the one for the highway department. And I suppose we should talk to Mr. O'Connor to see if he's happy with the size or if he thinks we should ask for something bigger. As far as how often those are picked up, we didn't change anything March through December, twice a week, at the times that we decided would be the best. And then January, February, once every 2 weeks, because obviously the parks are not really having that much volume during that time. And then additionally from time to time upon the request of the town. So as you mentioned, if there was some sort of a large event or something like that, we give them a heads up and say, hey, could you maybe hit it, a couple extra times this week. We also talked about adding recycling to our town parks, because right now, if you're down there with a soda bottle, there's a garbage can, you're going to throw it in the garbage can and then it's going to get hauled away, and that's something that we're paying for. So we talked about doing one recycling container at Ryder Park, coupled with recycling bins in all the parks. So the way that it would work is folks would throw their soda bottle in a recycling bin in Engle Park, say. Then our parks crew would come around whenever it is that they empty the trash, pull it out of the recycling bin, and bring it all up to one dedicated recycling dumpster at Ryder Park. The reason that they picked Ryder is because they think probably, we have Larry up there, we have a couple more eyes on it, they could build a little fence around it, they have an area all picked out that they think would be the best, and obviously that would save us money from having to have a recycling dumpster at each individual park. And then we also talked about, instead of crafting the recycling bins the way that they've done for the garbage bins, that maybe we could ask the contractor as part of the RFP to include about 20 recycling bins that we could use in the park.
I'd just be interested in where they want to put it.
He told me, and I don't remember, but I can find out. It's back.
Up on the top?
It's back up on the pavilion side.
Where you park, or
Yeah, up on the top of the parking lot. That's where I would think.
There's a
It's
dumpster up
not
there.
close to the road. It's far in, but I don't remember where he said.
problem is that I have up there is that it looks terrible. There, that
It's like a yard. It's like a yard. Right?
yeah, and it's really bad.
Yeah.
And you have a pavilion there in the summer, and you have kids there in camp, and they play on the dirt pile. It's terrible. So now we're gonna have a recycling bin too, which is probably the cleanest of all the things.
Right.
But
I mean, that could
probably
actually
the
be said
least
that.
offensive of everything there. But
I mean, we might say let's build a fence then, if you're gonna have, all that stuff back there. Build
Maybe.
a fence.
to
If
do
you need,
something, it's
a spot
bad.
thing
If
pretty,
we're
yeah.
not,
Yeah.
if we're not moving them,
Mhm.
which is what I've wanted to do forever, then something. But it's just not okay. So that's why, on the side, when you drive in on the left, there's a whole lot of parking on that side. So I could see nobody ever parks there. I mean, I don't know. It's just so I
Except
can
Larry,
see doing it there. Well, Larry doesn't have 50.
oh, you're
trees.
saying right at the beginning, right?
Yeah,
where
right
you
in the
drive.
middle by his
Yeah,
house.
Right by the.
Yeah, well,
poles.
there's a bunch,
Yeah.
and I could see there.
Is that where the charging station was going?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, up there where the kids play and the pavilion is and people
Maybe
rent,
we could
why?
see, maybe put it
We
by
could
the
just
shop.
put screening too. Or by the shop.
And it's got to be someplace the truck can get access to be able to,
Right,
to tip it.
exactly.
So it's.
You don't want it to be so loud. You know how loud it is. You don't want it to be right by the houses.
What time do they do the song?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I'm sorry, I live near SCC and the gun range. SCC starts at 5 in the morning.
This says 7 o'clock is the earliest pickup time,
Wait.
just so you know.
So that's not so terrible. They don't do
Other
that on Saturday and Sundays, right? Okay, there you go.
other than those, we did not make any changes except updating the dates. But what I do want to stress is that time is sort of important here. We wanted to have it on a town hall meeting. We wanted to. Well, what we have to decide really is, are you guys satisfied with option C, which is the 1, 1, and 1? So long as Ron and Michelle and Paul Frioli can give us some guidance on how to word it so that it makes
Be
sense.
okay with having option C as an option within, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, as Karen
And I
said,
expect there's flexibility
Never a
in where we
problem to
place our
ask.
dumpsters throughout the town. If all of a sudden Ryder Park is the place that everybody wants to be, then we can have more up there or whatever.
I mean, and again, if there's something in here that you guys say, okay, and then a year from now we're sitting here and you say, that was the worst idea, Maddie, you have ever had, ever, we can take it out.
Right. And don't
do it
forget
again.
that we
You
have
probably
the
won't say
option
it
to
like that.
renew every year, but when you renew, you could also say, could you add or could you subtract?
Yeah.
That way.
No, this is always, yeah, it's good.
So the next step from here, after speaking with Ron, Michelle, and Paul, is also to send it to Michael G. and Francine at the Highway Department to make sure that we're consistent with their practices, and to run it by our esteemed council to make sure, because they were not around when we did this
But
last
if you
time.
speak to the lovely Scarsdale people, who and who?
Ron and Michelle.
Ron and Michelle. And you're looking to them for verbiage with respect to, so can you just, if you get that circulated, like in an email?
Yeah.
Just so we can see what it
Mhm.
looks like?
Yep.
Because that,
I mean, I think, well, Maddie, when she was just listening to the video to try to take, of our meeting, to try to utilize some of the verbiage that they had used. So hopefully that is already reflected
Yeah,
in here, and they'll say, yeah, that sounds great.
You know, when I was talking with the boat club board, they were more interested in the recycling dumpster. Is that a place for?
Well, they'll
Or is
have
that a big one?
bins. They would have bins, potentially, and they could always get more recycling bins, and we could pick up those bins. Our parks guys could pick up those bins, I guess.
Okay.
So
Yeah, they would.
we'd have
There's a lot of
five.
recycling we would like to be doing,
Right.
and we're starting with the composting at the club with the food waste anyway. So we'd really like to enhance that. And it's difficult to recycle down there.
We can talk to Mario about it and see, if he thinks that might be an alternate location to the one at Ryder. That's just what he suggested.
Maybe
So
if
Kinda
that's
big.
something, maybe we want to put the food scrap pickup.
And we don't want to attract. There's river rats. There's raccoons. We don't want to attract more of them near the boats because they like to winter in there. Food scrap pickup.
They said
You just
that
don't
was,
wanna do
that was
compost,
one of the
doesn't-
points that they made.
Yeah, they
They
didn't
were
know
no
how many
elements
animals.
whatsoever.
Right.
Okay.
They didn't
aren't we just
attract
doing
Anyway,
curbside
it's-
for now, though? Isn't that
Yeah,
what we
no, I'm
talked about?
saying when curbside that they would pick up at the boat and canoe club food scraps too.
Oh, that would be. Yeah.
That's what I
that
was
would be well
suggesting.
thought of. I thought you meant to put the whole can thing down there.
No.
No.
I'm just saying. That
Oh
you
yeah,
guys
no,
would
they
have-
no,
you
they
have
would
a food scrap
they
pickup.
would like that. We're putting in a food scrap composter already, but we would like to pick up. I'm sure
I think we'd have to talk
you'd
about
want
it.
to talk to them.
We'd have to
We'd
talk.
have to talk about it because right now they don't do garbage pickup for them, right? Which is why we're talking about the dumpster.
But we have
So
our
now
own
you're
ones.
basically adding, don't pick up their garbage, but just pick up this little thing.
Well, if they were in favor of doing some kind of a share,
Mm-hmm.
where they are paying for something now, maybe they'd be paying a little less, and then there would be a food scrap, and I don't know. They could have. I don't know.
I just don't know that we have the time to have that whole for you to reach out and have that whole conversation before you have to put it. Yeah, that might be next year.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we'll just leave it as is for now.
Okay. So we are going to put a resolution on for next Tuesday, put this out on Wednesday morning. I know that we had spoken with Paul and Andy about making sure that we get the word out to, more than just the average, or not average, but the typical, vendors that we see. And I put it in for, I think, the week before Thanksgiving for bids to be collected. So that should give us just enough time. And that's it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right. So
It was a lot of work, Maddie.
It
Thank
was. I really appreciate
Yes.
it, Maddie. Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate you trying to help us be greener.
So, could I have a motion to go out of work session into executive session for advice of counsel and contracts?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Everybody have a wonderful night and a wonderful week, and we hope to see you around at many of the wonderful events there are in Ossining and Briarcliff this weekend and beyond. And I think it's still is it still Fire Prevention Week? I'm not sure. It's not Fire Prevention Week, so if you missed Fire Prevention Week, don't forget to change the batteries in your smoke alarms, and also make sure your carbon monoxide monitors are working. Okay? Have a great night, everybody.